Hey, it's Andrew again. As I mentioned in the last video, my name is Andrew, and I am the instructional coach for a company called Torch Prep. And if you remember, what we're talking about in these videos is kind of how to keep our minds healthy, even when the world around us is absolutely insane. And I want to kind of start this video off with just a quick story about me and about my life. When I was in first grade, when I was in kindergarten, let's actually back up a little bit. When I was in kindergarten, I went to, I don't know, maybe some of you did this, but went to half day kindergarten. So my day of kindergarten started at like 9 a.m. and then my parents came and picked me up at noon. So it was a half day kindergarten. And that's what I was used to. And when first grade rolled around, this was my first year of like all day school, like 8 to 3 kind of school. And I remember getting dropped off on my first day of first grade. I remember it really clearly. Walking into my classroom and sitting down, lunch rolled around, and when it got to be lunchtime, I was ready for my parents to come pick me up from school. So I was expecting to get picked up from school, and then we still had to stay for like 3 more hours. And I just couldn't believe it. I'd never been away from my parents, my mom. I'm a huge mama's boy. I'd never been away from my mom for that long. Anyway, the next morning, the second day of first grade, I woke up in the morning and my stomach didn't feel good. I was puking. It was gross. It was horrible. And so my mom said, Andrew, you're sick. Go ahead and stay home today. Go back to bed. I'll call the school, whatever. So I stayed home that day. I was sick. Day 3 of first grade rolls around. I wake up in the morning again. I'm not feeling good. My stomach hurts. My mom lets me stay home from school, et cetera, et cetera. The next day, I wake up and my stomach's still hurting. I'm not feeling good. But my mom on this day was like, Andrew, like most stomach viruses wear off. I think you're fine. I think you're going to have to go to school today. You can't keep missing school like this. And I remember my mom drove me to school. And I got out of the car, and I remember my family drove a Chevrolet Suburban at the time. And I remember looking as the Suburban pulled away behind me, and my mom was driving away, and I was left alone on the sidewalk leading up to school, and walking up to the door of my first grade classroom and just feeling this horrible feeling in my stomach, like I was going to throw up, and everything in me was screaming to run away from the door, to not go into the classroom. And I was just feeling so sick. And as I kind of look back on that time in my life, now looking back, I realize those first few days of first grade, I was never sick. I never actually had an illness. I was just really scared and incredibly anxious about spending that much time away from my mom. And so as I said, Torch Prep, I teach a lot of courses about anxiety. And one of the first things that as you study this, you kind of learn is that anxiety has the ability to create very physical symptoms in people. Whereas I was throwing up and felt physically ill, my anxiety created physical symptoms in me. Okay. So like I said, over the course of these videos, we're going to be discussing how to deal with that anxiety. But the first thing that you have to understand before we can start talking about these tools is, where does it come from? What is it? Why does it happen to us? Whether you are like me, where you have experienced panic attacks or physical illness because of your anxiety, or whether this is the first time in your life you've ever dealt with it and you feel just a constant sort of like knot or butterflies in your stomach or tightness in your chest or just the feeling of being worried right now because of the world, no matter where you fall on that spectrum, you've got to understand where these things come from in your brain. And so I'm going to show you just a quick video here. I'm going to make this part of the screen bigger and let you watch this video. And it is a video of this British guy explaining what happens in your brain to create the sensations of anxiety in your body. Okay. It's a super informative video. I'm just going to let it play and then we will debrief about it afterwards. Now, as you watch this video, I want you to pay attention for 3 key terms. There are 3 things that you need to understand I want you to listen for these. So I'm going to tell you about them on the front end. I want you to listen for these following 3 key terms. Number 1, the amygdala. Amygdala. I want you to listen for what is the amygdala. 2, I want you to listen for what is the fight, flight, or freeze response. And number 3, I want you to listen for what is a false activation. So 3 things you're listening for: amygdala, fight, flight, or freeze, and false activation. I'll let you watch this video, and we'll debrief afterwards.
Human.
Whoops. Okay, here we go.
Like all species, have self-protective mechanisms to help us survive. Our fight, flight, or freeze survival response, the FFF for short, is designed to mobilize our brain and body to fight an enemy, run from an avalanche, or freeze to hide from a predator. Our brain sometimes misinterprets safe situations as dangerous and can set off false alarms. When the amygdala, our brain's watchdog, senses and barks danger, our body enters survival mode quicker than our rational mind can react, leaving it trying to figure out why we feel in mortal danger. When the FFF alarm is sounded, we start to breathe more quickly and shallow, causing hyperventilation, and our heart starts beating very fast. These changes can cause strong chest pain, which many people interpret as symptoms of a heart attack, when in fact it's just a result of the FFF activation, which can be relieved through breathing exercises. As a way of getting you ready for action, blood is diverted towards the major muscle groups. Blood flows away from our digestive system, causing the bladder to relax, and we might feel the need to pee. The mouth goes dry, nausea can occur, and we get the butterflies feeling in our stomach. Blood also rushes from extremities, leaving us with cold hands, but often sweaty palms as the action-ready body starts sweating to avoid overheating. Legs and hands can start trembling and feel weak, while tension starts building in big muscles like the thighs, neck, and shoulders. In our head, FFF alarms cause our brain to focus on negative memories, probably so it can scan them to avoid danger and negative outcomes. We get tunnel vision as our pupils dilate to increase our focus and long vision, but as a result, we lose our peripheral vision. FFF activation also reduces our ability to recognize differences in facial expressions. Too much oxygen and too little CO2 can result in dizziness or lightheadedness, which many people interpret as signs that they might faint. But because fainting is caused by a drastic drop in blood pressure, and because the FFF increases both our heart rate and blood pressure, it's nearly impossible to faint when this happens. Over time, depression, anxiety, and high levels of stress all harm the brain's ability to slow or cancel false FFF activations, causing them to happen more often. Knowing the symptoms of false activations makes it easier to recognize and reduce their effects.
All right, so that is the video of our beloved British guy explaining kind of the biological causes for these feelings of anxiety that a lot of us have right now. And so I kind of want to just debrief on what he said. So the amygdala was the first thing that I told you to kind of keep your eye out for. The amygdala is this little piece in your brain. It's really small. It's this little piece in your brain that triggers your fight, flight, or freeze response, which is the second thing I told you to listen for. It's this little piece of your brain. It's like a little siren, and when it goes off, your body goes into fight, flight, or freeze mode. And in the video, they explain what fight, flight, or freeze is. It is this instinctual response that your brain and your body have to danger. So, if one of your siblings or somebody like jumps out and scares you around the corner, you go into fight, flight, or freeze mode. It's that rush of adrenaline, and you either like scream in recoil, or you like get ready to fight your little sibling, your little cousin or whatever. The amygdala triggers that response in your body. Now, scientifically speaking, that behavior in your brain, that fight, flight, or freeze, is useful in certain situations. Let me give you an example. You go camping. I love to go camping. If you ever run into a bear in the woods, you get surprised. You see a bear, you're going to go into fight, flight, or freeze mode real quick because your amygdala is going to alarm you. and you are going to go into fight, flight, or freeze mode. And in that situation, that's a good thing. That's an appropriate response because your brain and your body are trying to keep you safe from that immediate danger of the bear. But these things happen to us all the time called false activations. You want to know where anxiety comes from? It is this idea of a false activation. And what a false activation is, it's when you are not in immediate physical danger, but your amygdala still in some way, shape, or form puts you into fight, flight, or freeze mode. So that night that I woke up in the middle of the night, if you remember from the last video, I woke up in the middle of the night feeling all these crazy symptoms. I was experiencing a false activation. I was going into fight, flight, or freeze mode, even though there was nothing dangerous. There was no bear that was about to attack me. And this happens not to huge extremes, but in small extents all the time. So that feeling of butterflies you might have in your stomach or that constant tightness in your chest is actually just a small amount of fight, flight, or freeze response in your body. And so the problem is that those fight, flight, or freeze behaviors, those symptoms that you're experiencing of anxiety are meant to keep you safe from immediately dangerous physical situations. Somebody's attacking you. You run into a bear in the woods. You're about to get into a car accident. Your body has that response to keep you safe. But although there is some craziness happening in the world, most of you are not right now in immediate physical danger, but you might still be feeling those symptoms of anxiety. So in the coming videos, what we're going to talk about is, okay, so I know I'm not in immediate danger, but I still feel tightness in my stomach or I'm still experiencing anxiety. So what do? I'm in a false activation. What do I do? That's what we're going to talk about in the next videos. What tools are there available to you to help calm your body and your brain down in those situations? But it is super important for all of us to understand kind of where anxiety comes from in us and those feelings that we might be having towards what's going on in the world, they actually come from the amygdala in your brain. So in the next videos, we're going to talk about how to calm down the amygdala, how to stop a false activation, and yeah, I'll catch you in the next video. See you then.